I use wheel-thrown porcelain that has been altered off the wheel while the porcelain is still wet. Then I come back when the porcelain is leather hard and I carve away my line designs and incision work. At that point I do my edge work. Then I let the porcelain get to be bone dry, completely dry, and I sand any of my tool marks out of the clay. Then this fire it for strength, and the reason that I don't just once fire this work, which is not glaze, is that I'm doing a lot of manipulation in the firing to get gravity to work with me to help alter my pieces and help me create the pieces. This workshop is about altering. Altering, you need to have in clay, if you're going to alter clay, it has to be in a plastic form, right? If it's not plastic, it's going to crack. When you try to bend it, you're not going to be able to alter it. So people have always altered clay. Porcelain is what I'm working with at the wet stage when you can manipulate it. But porcelain has another place where you can alter clay, and that is in that white hot vitrification. It reaches malleability once again, and it becomes pretty much plastic in the kiln. If you knocked over a piece, you would find in the white hot heat, you would find when that piece cooled down a dent in it, but it wouldn't crack. So, I mean, that was the first thing I found out when I was a long time ago, which was surprising to me. It's not the same as glass. We're actually working with a whole different molecular process. But the result is somewhat the same. So where I've cut away that strong arch support inherent in the throne form, that piece is going to slump. And so that is a part of the altering that I'm going to try and talk about. Please ask me any questions as we get into this about it, but I can't obviously actually demonstrate that part of it. But it is inherent in my forms. Now I'm going to throw for you on the wheel, and I'm going to demonstrate the technique of dry throwing porcelain, which is an important technique for me because it allows me to get those very horizontal shapes and throw as thinly as I possibly can at the porcelain. And so that's actually what we're trying to film, is that technique of dry throwing. We shall see. And then I'm going to go through altering the piece and carving the piece. Hopefully we can do all of this. The three pieces that I'm going to demonstrate for you are this piece and these two pieces. The reason, I don't really sell these much anymore, but the reason that I like to demonstrate this is I charge you all with making your own light fixtures, okay? See? So this is a wall sconce, and you can just put it where, wherever you're going to have a place where you have a wall sconce. There's no reason why all of you potters shouldn't be making your own lighting. So I first started the idea of it, because I work with the, it's just the bare porcelain. And they use bare porcelain for a lot of different things. And I was in Ace Hardware one time, and I saw this unglazed porcelain light fixture. And I said, oh wow, that looks just like my porcelain. Wow, I could actually make a sconce or something and it would match. So I started with that, and I did. And this is basically, so you can pass this around. Because I'm going to demonstrate this piece.
How many pounds is that?
I think about 10. We didn't measure it. Do we need to?
No.
We'll be starting small.
There's no need for me drawing this big. The only need is that you can see it better. I'm going to be personal in a minute. Parker said, you can't center that. It's way too stiff, Nancy Parker. What it is I'm not using my arms much at all. See, I'm really just leaning into this. I'm not going to bother coning this thing up and down because I want to keep the stiffness as much as I can. So, if you haven't wedged it well enough, well, sorry for that, but really, you want to throw stiff, you can't be throwing water back into the clay. Sure. Good, I need it. Thank you.
So you let the clay get dry?
Yeah, I do. I actually set it out and we set it out for about 3 hours. It was a little bit much today, but you just actually at home I'm throwing the clay to stiff because I have now got myself a pub pen. Stainless steel GM. It is so awesome. I can throw as stiff as my heart desires. It comes out just like perfectly, no bubbles whatsoever. I was pretending to wedge bubbles into my clay more than out of them because I was working stiffer and stiffer. But this just, comes out, we just whack it down into a cone. And so the consequences is I've lost my wedging muscles. So I come here to do this and it's like, Now, in the technique of dry throwing, it doesn't become anything special until after I've thrown up my cylinder. I throw up my cylinder just the same as everyone. I punch down my opening, I smooth my bottom. Now I tamp down my bottom to compress it. Because you see all my shapes, they've got that narrow bottom, they come up and go like so. I only have, that's as much of an opening as I have here. If I was somebody else and throwing a different shape, I'd go ahead and pull that base out. This is not any, I'm just trying to pull up this. See, I've made allowances for myself as I am aged, and you can sort of see I'm not using my fingers all the way. At this point, I'm using this rib, this bone on my hand, just grabbing it under and then like holding it, and just like sort of pulling it back. And I'll do the first. This is a fairly large piece of clay. First couple of pulls, I'll do like that to try and get the, that bottom part up. Don't you like this apron? I feel like so happy to have this apron. I feel like a little bit of the team here, the Clay Lady team. since our purpose of this shape is to go out, I'm not going to comb this in at all. As a matter of fact, I want it to start going out a bit. I'm still counting this as a cylinder though, okay? Still working on getting this.
Did you say what the size of the piece of clay was?
About 10 pounds, I believe.
What clay do you use?
This clay is the Miller 550 made by Laguna Clay. I have more clay on the bottom, and the point of that is to anchor the piece. I will cut that off. I will cut off the extra clay down on the bottom before I take it off the wheel. So, when I'm happy with my cylinder, that is that I have gotten it as thin as I can. Because I'm a porcelain potter, I want to throw thin. That's the aesthetic of porcelain. And so we're going to pretend that this is just the perfectly thrown as a cylinder as thin as we can. And we all know about demonstrating that you just have to add a couple pounds. But I have finished using water, and now I'm going to be throwing with these ribs, and I'm not going to use any more water. I have these two metal ribs. They're flexible metal ribs, and you can buy them here. There's this one and this little kidney one. They've got an infinite number of curves. Cramps and fingers. Play on cheek. It's going to be a haiku, right? I don't know where it's going. Anyway, I've got these two ribs, and the first pass that I do is to scrape the slurry off the pot that I've just put on there. I'm also scraping out my finger marks, but with these ribs, but I am not attempting to change the shape of the clay. I want to get all of that stuff off of there. Now, when you start practicing with this technique is great for any clay, porcelain or stoneware, anything. But it takes a little time to get used to it. I used to cut myself on these all the time. And I still usually do, like when I'm demonstrating, I get nervous now. Cut myself. You cut yourself with these ribs. Paper tape, you know, that you got at the first aid. This stuff is the best because, you know, your porcelain's getting all red and you're going, oh my gosh, I have to dish it for 2 weeks. No, All you have to do is bind this up and then keep on throwing. Because it'll stay, it doesn't matter if it gets wet, it's perfect. It's better than a Band-Aid or anything. Okay, so now I have taken off this slurry, right, of the outside of here. I'm going to start making this shape. And as I said, this shape wants to go out like that to make that wall style. Yeah. So I'm going to start by pulling this out of there. You notice I'm speeding on this shape. I'm sort of making my wheel go faster for centrifugal force to help. I'm using both of these ribs to help push this out like in an equal. Let's start it like that. Now, as I'm pulling these up, my inside rib right now is above my outside rib. I'm sort of, the inside rib's doing more work, right, because it's going out. The outside rib's really important to hold that shape in place. So it's like being a supporter underneath, holding the shape as I'm pushing with the inside rib. Sort of see from where the slurry is on these ribs, where it's making contact. You don't want this slurry on here. It's actually clay. It's not that soft anymore. You don't want it on there because the reason these ribs work is that you have this tiny amount of surface area that's touching the clay. And so the reason that you normally use water is that your fingers have all this surface area, and it creates that drag. So as you're moving the clay, you create that drag, and so the wheel going around is causing torque, and so it gets it off center, therefore you need slurry. Well, since you have only this small amount of surface area, that's why it is that this technique is working. And the reason that I use the metal ribs is not only do I have the least amount of surface area, but I've got all that bend. So I can create infinite curves. If I'm working on a convex surface, I'm going to use this side, and a concave surface, you know, the surface that goes like that, excuse me, I'm going to use the curved side. But if I'm working on a convex surface, then I can use the flat side. And then I just bend these with my hands to make that work.
Jennifer, have you ever had it grab after several of these pulls, and do you have a warning if it would?
Yeah, let go of your rib. Very good question. It is a very good question because it will, if it lets go, if you feel that slip out of your hand, just immediately let go. And then stop your wheel and pull it out. Thank you for that question. It feels kind of scary in a sense to have that rib in there. You just pull your hand out real fast. Anytime you're pulling out a rim like this, you want to back it up. You want to add compression back down. And when I do that, because I'm using all the surface area, you see I'm using a little bit more water, just on the edge. I want to be careful not to let the water drip down though. I could work with this clay for as long as I wanted to coax out this shape, coax out this horizontal shape. I could work with it for an hour if I wanted to, right? Because it's not getting wetter. The clay's only getting drier because it's not absorbing more moisture. I'm not losing strength with this porcelain. This works out fine for any clay body that you want to use, but it's especially useful for porcelain because the small particles, the small even particle size of porcelain for some reason seems to absorb moisture faster than your stoneware bodies. And that's why people say, oh, porcelain's so hard to work with, but it's just that it absorbs moisture fast.
Were you putting pressure on both ribs when you were just doing that part when they were apart from each other?
When I have both ribs on the inside and I'm pushing down, I am using both ribs. I'm putting pressure with both ribs because what I'm doing is I'm sort of, this forms wide and I'm one place it sort of will throw it off center, but if I put the counterbalance opposite to it, it's keeping the piece on center. So I use a cup, that's really fine for pulling out the top part, but to pull out the bottom, to like make this into an even curve, I have to come from the bottom and go ahead and work this out. Every few pulls, I go ahead and put compression back into this rim. This is the same shape that I used to make those ribbon bases. That handout shows your making sequence inside of the ribbon base, and you can sort of see how the first step is to make a shape such as this. It turns into a completely different form than the wall stump, but it's the same basic shape. Now, if I'm actually making a form out of this, I've already gone into a horizontal past what is all that useful. But the reason I'm continuing to pull this out in this demonstration is I want you guys to understand the strength of this, how much horizontality you are able to have in your piece because you're dry throwing this piece instead of wet.
If a person were not as strong as you and didn't have a nice little stainless steel puzzle, could you throw a regular moisture piece
Yeah.
and let it set for a while? And then
I don't know about letting it set for a while, I suppose, but what happens when you let it set is you're automatically starting to have an uneven drying. You're going to dry different on the outside and the inside. However, I would say you don't need to play this stiff. I don't need to usually play this stiff. I let it get stiff, I admit. I was watching Susie and I got just too enthralled with watching her demonstration and I forgot about my play sitting out and I came back and I said, oh no. So go ahead and throw it up using your softer clay, and then continue. This technique is still going to work. Remember, as soon as you stop using the water, it's actually starting to dry, Okay, so we're going to pretend that this is exactly how I want it. And so the next thing I'm going to do is to work on the next thing I want to do is go ahead and cut off this extra clay here. This is a lot thicker down here on the bottom, and I don't really want the piece to be that thick, but I did need that extra clay down there to anchor the form. Go ahead. You notice how I'm not cutting all the way down? Do you see that little lip down here? That's important in cutting this piece off, because if I cut all the way down by this point, I'm pushing hard enough that I would shove this off center. So I still have this bit of an anchor to keep the piece on center. Okay, so that's probably good enough. So I'm just going to go ahead and the last thing I do is go ahead and pull that on down. Okay, so what I do want to do now, however, is go ahead and give this one more hole in between these. And the point of this is to give even compression. Because that had all that extra clay down there, I was not ever able to really compress it as much as I was the clay up here that was more thin. So now I have cut away the clay and made that thinner. I'm going to go ahead and press these two ribs together to add compression to that bottom part of the clay, so I have a more even compression with the rest of the piece, so that I won't get cracking when it dries. All right. Needle tool. I just like to make a little bevel right here, because I don't need that extra clay. Cut this baby off of here. All right. So here's my piece. I can really handle it quite easily because it's not so wet, eh? I just been using too much water on it. So, take this clay piece and let's go here with it. And this is the altering part. Remember, this is about altering the throne form here. It's altering. There we go. You have to dry them interestingly. You want to keep protecting the rim. You make a hole here. But anyway, I did want to give you guys the rest of this story. So I made one of these up last night, and I left it sit in this bag, which probably wasn't wise, but sort of leather hard. But I kept this bottom part. This is how it's thrown like that. It's still pretty wet. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this bottom part to pull that handle. Okay? See? That's not. This is away from this, right? Okay. Well, so I got this extra clay on here, and so it's just like a big handle. Just work it through. Maybe it's a little on the stiff side. another form of alteration. You know, we've worked so hard to learn how to pull a handle, right? And it can't just be for your teapots or mugs, for heaven's sakes. Let's make our lighting fixture. We'll pull our lighting fixture. Sort of bring that twist in there. See how it's changing? Yeah, and I might get little cracks in here, right down here. Well, this doesn't have any, but it can happen. So what? It's like up on your wall. The rest of it's I try to avoid that by doing that covering the way you see that one over there. You're welcome to like pick that thing up and take it out and like show it around too. You can maybe pass it around when it's covered, Susie, so people, I don't know, whatever you think is best, like so that they can kind of see how it was.
It's got the tail on it.
Yeah, it does. But it's just a demo. But think of it sort of is the way it's covered. You know, like there, you know, it has got all these opportunities of drying, and you monitor its drying, and you see what's dry or not, and you kind of.
Did you guys know she's taking this back to another dollar? So she can monitor that?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been mothers, we've done it before, right? We get up every hour with a baby, it's the same sort of thing. Oh, is it dry enough yet? I have to cover it.
People want to see, people want to pass this around?
You're welcome to, you can take it out of there, baby, and pass it around. All right, so anyway, you get the idea. So, what's going to happen if I'm going to take this into here is that I'm going to this piece here. I don't want that sticking up. I'm sort of getting ahead of myself, but I'm just going to give myself another 30 seconds to sort of show you how that would go, you know, and then you can sort of see the holes because you need these two holes to hang it on the wall. And then you need like a couple of holes here to put your wire through. I guess I have several holes. It's a good idea to do a series of holes up because if the thing sinks down too much, you can still get your light socket in there. Did you see how I had a sponge in this? Where did that go? Okay, yeah, I had a sponge in this one here. Okay, this is a quick aside, because we were talking about how these are altering. If you're going to make these out of porcelain, go ahead and get a piece of soft brick and make it into a sponge thing like that, shaped like that. You know, you can just go like this with your soft brick and then dip it in silica, right? So that the silica is not going to stick to the bare porcelain and your soft brick stuff doesn't stick to it. And then you just set it like that in your kiln. And then your piece isn't going to collapse in on you. It's easy.
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, and this is getting into, we can definitely talk about this because we're still talking about the altered form, right? Because if you don't do this, the form is going to alter to a less place where you're not going to be able to use it. Yeah, but you know how, you all worked with soft brick before. You know how you can take a soft brick and, well, you can just cut it with a bandsaw, or if you don't have one, you can take it out onto your concrete, just go like this, and make a form out of it. Well, the form is similar to this sponge. I mean, well, it's like a half circle for something like that. And I've found that if I just stick that form into this, that it's going to work fine, but I may get little crumbles of the soft brick on here, which are refractory. And when it settles onto the porcelain, which becomes malleable, right? We've talked about that stage of malleability in the fire kiln. It's become soft. And you might get little marrings, indentations on that. I use in my kiln silica, just, you know, silica, all, like what you make your glazes out of all the time. I put it on my, because I'm not using glazes, right, with the bare porcelain. I put it on my shelves so that, just like that, so that when the pots contract, because they shrink so much, they don't stick onto the kiln shelves. Or if I'm using a form like that, I dip that whole thing in so it's flour. You know, like a veal cutlet and flour, you know, and then it won't stick onto.
Are you mixing it like as a kiln wash, or are you just working with it like dry powder?
Just the dry powder. See, because that's the thing, I don't use kiln wash, and I use the dry powder because then afterwards, with my mask on, my really good respirator, don't forget that part, it's important, I will just sweep it up with my dustpan and brush and start again, so everything's always fresh.
Do you use the silica flour or the silica?
It's silica, just the normal mesh that you would make your glazes with. It's, I don't know, it's probably 200 mesh, who knows? 300, okay.